Welcome. My name is Judea. I'm a clairvoyant medium, spiritual guide, and teacher. Throughout my life, I've encountered beings and had visions that revealed profound insights. Here, I share the stories and lessons that returned with me. May they awaken wonder, curiosity, or validate your own perceptions of the magical, multidimensional reality we live in. I am a vision keeper, and this is my journey between worlds. How do we help spirits cross over? From more than 20 years of direct experience working with spirits, I've learned what truly works and what doesn't. Many approaches that seem effective on the surface often have little impact, while others, less obvious, prove to be far more successful. This understanding came through years of observation, trial, and refinement. At first, I didn't fully understand what was happening. I simply observed, learned, and then adjusted. Over time, patterns emerged, and I was eventually able to consistently help spirits who came to me seeking assistance. Technique and method are certainly part of the process, but an equally important component is the inner development of the spirit medium. In the astral realms, where energy is fully visible and transparent, your inner state matters. How you resonate determines how spirits perceive and engage with you. In the beginning, my openness attracted a great deal of curiosity from wandering spirits, and my limited understanding led to interactions that felt experimental on both sides. As my discernment grew, my spiritual foundation strengthened, and my spirit guides became more clearly established, something shifted. Spirits began responding to me differently, more respectfully, more intentionally. Over time, I developed an energetic presence that clearly communicated my purpose. Spirits approaching me now do so because they're genuinely seeking assistance in crossing over, or they are sent to me specifically for that purpose. Those with other intentions have hesitation in approaching because of the protective forces that now assist me. What once felt intrusive became focused and purposeful. This work is a result of years of development and refinement, and it can be taught. There's no special status required to help a spirit cross. Anyone can learn to do it. With proper understanding, preparation, and inner alignment, you simply become more effective in the process. Over the years, I've had countless experiences, far too many to recount in full. But a few stand out as pivotal moments that taught me something essential about helping spirits cross. I don't claim to have been perfect in any of this, often learning to do things right by doing them wrong first. Like anyone, I carried my own wounds and unresolved trauma, and those unhealed parts of myself sometimes influenced how I responded or reacted in ways I wouldn't today. Yet it was often through these imperfect moments that the most meaningful lessons emerged. Those early interactions not only taught me more about how to work with spirits, but also revealed the parts of myself that needed healing. In the beginning, I didn't know what to expect or how any of it truly worked. I was learning in real time, navigating unfamiliar terrain without a map. Slowly, through experience and observation, I began to understand the perspective of spirits, their needs, their confusion, their longing, and how I could best serve them as a spirit medium. What developed over time was not just technique, but discernment, a deeper awareness of when to act, how to listen, and how to hold space in a way that was both grounded and compassionate. These experiences shaped my understanding of spirit work and helped me grow not only as a medium, but as a person. To help you understand my process, I should also explain something about how I perceive energy. I generally see people's auras all the time, though over the years I've learned to tune that perception down. I do this intentionally because I've come to feel that reading someone's energy without invitation can be a kind of privacy violation. Even when I can see something clearly, I don't always feel it's my place to interpret or engage with it. If what I perceive is positive, I usually don't mind seeing it. But if something feels off or unbalanced, I often choose not to focus on it. I've learned that energy can reflect countless influences, and I don't believe it's healthy or kind to analyze or judge someone based on energy that might be temporary. Giving too much attention to distorted or heavy energy can also be draining, and I've learned to protect myself from that. There have been moments, though, when something becomes impossible to ignore, no matter how much I try to tune it out. Moments when what I'm perceiving insists to be seen. And often, it's only then that I realize I had been sensing it all along. I was just choosing not to acknowledge it. This is such the case with an experience I had with a friend of mine back in 2013. I was living in California. I had recently met this friend. We hadn't spent a great deal of time together yet. Most of our interactions were casual, often in group settings, and usually brief. Still, I was drawn to her creativity, her unique aesthetic, and her sharp, playful sense of humor. I would describe this friend as very artistic and free-spirited, with a natural openness in her mediumship and clairvoyance, though she may not have perceived the spirit world as vividly as I did. On this day, we were together outside on a beautiful, sunny summer afternoon. After sharing with her about my clairvoyant abilities, she looked at me and said, "Well, if you ever see anything on me, please tell me." The moment she said it, a wave of energy seemed to flash over her face, almost like it had been waiting for permission to be seen. As soon as I noticed it, I realized I had been sensing it all along. I had just been choosing not to focus on it. I smiled, careful not to reveal that I was already picking up on something. I still didn't understand what it was, but once she opened the door, the anomaly in her aura became more distinct. Up until then, what I perceived was subtle, more like a haze in her energy, especially around her face. Initially, I dismissed it as energetic residue. Some people are naturally empathic and tend to pick up energy from people or places and don't know how to cleanse themselves of it. I assumed that's what I was noticing on her. Even when it caught my attention, I didn't give it much weight. It could have been caused by any number of things. But with her explicit invitation, I couldn't not look closer. As I observed her more carefully, the haze sharpened into something specific. The density was concentrated over her head and down to about her shoulders. It felt like a thick layer had been placed on top of her, almost as if she was partially cocooned inside of it. The more I allowed myself to focus, the heavier and more obvious it became, and it even started taking on a dingy, mustard yellow tone. I felt uneasy observing it. What had once seemed vague now felt clearly off, alarming even. I knew I hadn't been seeing it with this level of clarity before, but now that my attention was fully on it, I could tell something more serious was happening, and it wasn't right. And now it felt like a mystery that needed to be solved. So I took my time. I kept watching quietly, wanting to understand what I was perceiving before I said anything to her. There was a moment when we were sitting closely together, deep in an intimate conversation, and as I continued observing this dense energy around her, something strange happened. She looked directly at me, and her eyes glazed over with this thick, milky white film, so opaque it was as if somebody had smeared Vaseline across them. I could no longer see her eye color at all. I jolted back, genuinely startled. The fear must have shown on my face, because she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me with concern. "What happened?" she asked. I could no longer hide it. "There's something on you," I said carefully. "There's this thick energy around you, so much that I can barely see you underneath." It was at this point so grotesque looking that I wanted to spare her from describing it too much in detail. She looked alarmed but calm. "What is it?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. But I felt a strong, instinctive desire to clean her. I'd worked with cleansing energy long enough to know that I could likely help clear it. She agreed to let me do it. I lifted my hands and began moving them around her head in slow, sweeping motions, as if I was pulling and brushing this energy off of her. I could feel the texture of it, dense, sticky, resistant, almost like trying to pull through a thick, gelatinous goo. I could tell it was working, though slowly. With each pass, it incrementally softened and gradually started thinning. As I continued, I watched the heaviness in her aura begin to lift. The haze that once surrounded her eyes started to clear, and just as I was noticing this, she suddenly said, "Whoa!" as if in shock. Her reaction made me stop what I was doing. "What?" I asked. She told me that her entire life she had seen this blurry spot in the corner of her vision, and that as I was clearing this energy off of her, it had suddenly disappeared. She had grown so used to it being there that seeing it disappear shocked her. She looked almost amused, smiling in disbelief. But as I lowered my hands and paused, I saw the energy begin to gather again. It thickened, congested, reforming exactly where it had been before, and almost immediately she said, "Oh, never mind, it's back." I knew then that what I was seeing and what she was experiencing were directly connected. "Let me keep going," I said, and resumed clearing the energy around her head. Once again, the density began to lift. I focused, determined to fully clear it. And then something deeply unsettling happened. A sudden image flashed before me, interlaced in the blob of energy around her. It was a very old woman's face and frail, twisted body. It was wrinkled and worn, deeply etched with age. The shock of it made me recoil, instinctively pulling back my hands as if I'd touched something unpleasant. Because it was the last thing I expected to see, it totally startled me. My friend looked at me with concern as I returned the same look back to her. We sat in silence for a moment because she could tell something significant had just occurred, something that needed a minute to settle before being spoken on. The brief vision carried an immense amount of information. In the seconds that followed, it was as though an entire understanding downloaded into me. I could sense the old woman's fragility, her extreme age, the stiffness in her body, the stagnation in her energy. I could even smell her, an unmistakable old stale scent, like the air of something that had been unmoving for far too long. Her presence felt collapsed inward, contracting and clinging. She wasn't fully aware anymore. Her eyes, when I saw them, were unfocused, almost vacant, as though she were lost in a dream. I sensed that she had been holding on for so long that she had forgotten who she was. She had become fully attached, anchored into the energy of my friend, unconsciously living through her, mistaking my friend's life for her own. I understood that as I began clearing the dense, stagnant energy, something in this old woman had stirred. The momentary clarity I witnessed, the flash of awareness, was the first time in perhaps many years that she had perceived herself as separate, as someone distinct, as someone who had a different life than my friend. She'd been clinging not out of malice, but out of confusion and fear, grasping onto life through my friend because she was afraid to let go. Then something clicked in my mind. I remembered a story this friend had once shared with me, that when she was very young, she had an elderly grandmother who lived well into her 90s, bound to a wheelchair. She hadn't spoken of her often, but in that moment, the memory of her telling me this surfaced. I knew instinctively that it was her. The presence I was sensing belonged to that grandmother. A story unfolded in my inner eye, and I was seeing that grandmother in her spirit form after she had crossed over, realizing she could experience the sensations of life through her granddaughter. What began as occasional moments of inhabiting her body gradually became more frequent, almost obsessive, as remaining attached to her was far more comforting and exciting than the lonely limbo she was experiencing in her earthbound state. By the time my friend reached young adulthood, it was clear that the bond had permanently taken hold. The realization stunned me. I felt a wave of dread at the thought of telling my friend that her grandmother, someone she loved, had been clinging to her after death, creating this dense and distorted energy around her. From where I stood, the attachment felt unhealthy, almost suffocating. Yet I was aware that my friend wasn't experiencing it in the way that I did. To her, her grandmother was simply someone she loved and remembered fondly. The idea of framing that connection as something harmful felt cruel. For a moment, I questioned myself. What if I was wrong? What if I was misinterpreting what I was seeing? The responsibility of potentially altering her perception of someone dear to her bothered me, but the truth of what I was perceiving also felt undeniable. I realized then that I was encountering something entirely new, a spirit attachment far deeper and more embedded than anything I had witnessed before. I had seen entity attachments in the past, but this was different. This was entanglement, and I had no clear reference for how to address it. But something in me compelled me to speak. I chose my words carefully, wanting to honor my friend and the presence of her grandmother. I didn't want to shame, frighten, or condemn anyone, living or not. And as I spoke, something remarkable happened. The words seemed to come through me, rather than from me, guided by a calm and steady clarity that felt wiser than my own understanding. It was as if some deeper truth was gently expressing itself through me, showing me how to proceed, even as I was discovering it in real time. So I told her what I was seeing. I said, "Your grandmother is attached to you. She's been with you since she passed, and she's been holding on to your energy, specifically around your head. She wanted to continue living life through you. She isn't doing this to harm you. She did it because she was afraid, because she wasn't ready to move on. You were familiar to her, you felt safe, and you're very open." I explained that she had been drawn to the vitality of her body and the vibrancy of her experiences, which was a welcome reprieve from the confined, motionless existence she had endured for so many years bound to a wheelchair. Even in death, she felt the age and tiredness of her spirit. Of course she would want to continue experiencing the sensations of life, as it was so much better than where she was. She had grown so accustomed to being attached that over time she slowly lost awareness of herself as separate. She unintentionally surrendered to the experience and forgotten who she was. But it's time for her to go now, I continued gently. She needs to understand that this isn't where she belongs anymore, that it's okay to let go. No one is angry with her, no one is judging her. If she's willing to go, what's waiting for her is safe. It's loving, it's light. All the weight she's been carrying, all the fear, the heaviness, the pain of her old age doesn't need to come with her. As I spoke, I was aware that I was addressing both my friend and her grandmother at the same time. The words seemed to reach beyond language, carrying intention as much as meaning. Then, without fully knowing how I knew, I looked at my friend and said, "You're the one who has to tell her. She needs to hear it from you. You need to tell her that it's time to go, that she can't stay here anymore, and that where she's going is safe, that she needs to go home to God." It wasn't something I had planned to say. It simply arrived, clear, calm, and certain, as though the truth itself was guiding the moment. And then, as if guided by something unseen, I stood up and walked away from her. I wasn't fully conscious of the decision. It felt instinctual and directed. I knew she needed privacy to have this moment with her grandmother. There was a brief impulse to turn around, to check on her, but a calm inner voice said, "Don't look yet." So I didn't. I kept my back to her, trusting that whatever was guiding me would let me know when the moment was right. After a few minutes, I heard the voice again. "Okay, you can look now." When I turned around, I was stunned. My friend's aura was completely clear. Not just clear, but radiant. Light poured upward and outward from her crown, luminous and expansive. Where there had once been a thick congestion of heaviness, there was now openness and brilliance. It was as if something that had long been holding her down had finally lifted, and what remained was her natural light, finally free to express itself. I could see it so clearly, her energy no longer capped, no longer muted. It felt as though she had been trying to shine her whole life, and in that moment she finally could. At the same time, she turned to look at me. We locked eyes, and without planning it, without thinking, we both said in unison, "She's gone." I rushed towards her as tears streamed down her face. I was stunned, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. I wanted to understand it, so I asked her, "What happened?" Her voice trembled as she spoke. She told me that the moment I said her grandmother was attached to her, she didn't question it, not for a second. Suddenly, so many pieces of her life fell into place. Years earlier, she had lost her sense of smell due to polyps in her nose. She couldn't smell anything, except, inexplicably, one scent. From time to time, she would catch the unmistakable smell of her grandmother. Even though she had been very young when her grandmother passed, the scent was vivid in her memory. It would come and go regularly, without explanation. She also told me that throughout her life, she had often felt her grandmother's presence nearby. Not in a luminous or elevated way, but in the same fragile, weary state that she had been in before she died, old and tired. She had never thought of it much, only that her grandmother was possibly visiting her. As I spoke and named what I was seeing, something clicked for her. She realized she had always felt it, she just hadn't had the language for it. Once it was named, it became unmistakably clear. She knew without a doubt that what I was saying was true. When I stepped away from her, she told me she immediately began speaking to her grandmother. "Grandma," she said, "I love you, but I'm sorry, you can't stay here with me. You have to go into the light. You have to go home to God. I know where you're going is beautiful. I know you'll be at peace there, but you can't stay." As she spoke, she felt her grandmother become aware, really aware, acknowledging that she had been totally consumed by what she was doing, and even conveyed that she was sorry she did it. She sensed her understanding, realizing that she had been clinging to her, and that it was time to let go. My friend felt a release, and a weight lifted off of her. And then right before her eyes, she saw her grandmother begin to lift away from her. She described her ascending and floating upward into the clear blue sky, her face soft and smiling, surrounded by light, until she faded from view. And after her grandmother left, it was in that moment we both turned to each other and said, "She's gone." As my friend spoke, I found myself completely captivated by her presence. I had always thought she was beautiful, but now she looked radiant, in a way I had never seen before. Her skin appeared more clear and luminous, her eyes brighter, her features softer yet more defined. Even the shape of her face seemed more refined, more balanced, more open. It's hard to describe precisely, but it felt as though something had once muted her natural beauty, and now it had been lifted. It was as if the lingering presence of her grandmother had obscured her light all those years, and now, with that dense energy gone, her true essence shone through, vibrant, clear, youthful, and fully alive. She looked free in a way that was unmistakable. At her third eye, I saw a sparkle of light presenting itself like a jewel, and beaming from it, the energetic impression of wings, like the wings of Isis, unfurling outward like an energetic crown placed upon her head. I recognized it instantly as a mark of heightened intuition, priestess energy, and awakened clarity. And over the years that followed, as I came to know her more deeply, that transformation only continued to unfold. She stepped more fully into herself, more confident, more embodied, and more assured in her presence. There was a goddess-like quality to her, not in performance, but in authenticity. And I am happy to report that the blurry spot in her vision finally went away permanently. From this experience, I came to understand a particular kind of spirit attachment, one rooted not on the surface of someone's energy, but deeply embedded within it. In these cases, spirits can become so absorbed in what they're doing that they gradually lose awareness of themselves. They forget who they are, where they are, and even that they once lived their own life and then passed on. Time itself seems to dissolve for them. Years may pass without their awareness, lost in the experience of another person's life unfolding. This kind of attachment is usually not born of ill intent. More often, it arises from confusion and fear of letting go, fear of the unknown, or fear of leaving behind what once felt familiar and safe. In that state, the spirit clings not to harm, but out of uncertainty, unaware of the impact that it may be having on the person that they're attached to. Often, they are simply doing the best they can with the awareness they still have. They don't realize the strain it may place on the living. In these cases, compassion is essential. Judgment only deepens the confusion. What's needed instead is gentle clarity, helping them recognize what they've become entangled in and guiding them back towards their own individual path. With patience, kindness, and clear intention, it's possible to help them remember who they are and where they truly belong. When that awareness returns, so does their freedom. 2 years later, I would have another significant experience with spirit attachments, again involving the same friend. At that time in my life, I was going through an incredibly difficult chapter, one of the hardest I've ever faced. A series of events had unfolded that, if I laid them out, would sound unbelievable. I found myself in an absurd and painful situation where people I had trusted were suddenly turning against me over rumors of things that I hadn't done. Stories twisted, friends I believed were solid began to distance themselves and judge me based on hearsay. No one took the time to ask me directly if any of it was true. This experience of false accusation was devastating. I felt betrayed, misunderstood, and deeply hurt. I was being written off by people I had once loved and felt so loyal to, and I was constantly existing in defensive mode. I was forced into a position where I had to examine myself honestly, listening to what was being said about me, not to accept it as truth, but to confirm for myself that I wasn't who they said I was. It was a very brutal kind of self-realization. At the same time, I was learning what it meant to stand on my own, to find my sense of self when external validation disappeared. I was angry, grieving, and exhausted, yet also being pushed into a deeper self-knowledge. It was a period marked by judgment, gossip, and emotional isolation. I often felt powerless and victimized, as though I was being bullied by adults who should have known better, with very few people willing to stand beside me. It was a painful unraveling, but also in retrospect, a profound initiation. I share all of this with you because what happened in the next story carried a resonance that mirrored what I was moving through in my own life. There was something symbolic unfolding that reflected my inner world back to me in a way that I couldn't fully see. My friend had been living in Costa Rica for part of the year and had just returned to the States in time to join me and some other friends for some Halloween festivities. A group of us planned the night out, including a concert followed by an after party, and we all chipped in for a limousine so we could travel together safely. We arrived at the concert in costume. I paired up with another friend. She dressed entirely in white, and I wore all black, playing into the light and dark motif. It felt appropriate for what I was going through in my life at the time. Our group gathered at the concert and drifted in and out of one another's orbits throughout the night. We danced, laughed, and crossed paths between songs, immersed in the energy of the crowd and the spectacle of costumes all around us. Conversation was minimal, and music pulsed too loudly for much talking, but the joy of the moment carried us. When the concert ended, we spilled out into the street and waited for the limousine we had arranged. Once it arrived, we piled in together, still laughing, still riding on the celebration of the night, and settled in for the drive to the after party. It was in that quieter space, away from the noise and movement, that I finally had a moment to truly tune into my friend who had just returned from Costa Rica. I watched her as she sat there, her energy light and animated. She wore gold-framed aviator sunglasses and a rhinestone-covered white jumpsuit with bell-bottoms, a playful, glamorous interpretation of Elvis. She'd always had an effortless sense of style, something expressive and magnetic, even when she was in costume. And that's when I noticed it. Just over her shoulder, slightly behind her, I saw something that didn't belong. It was the presence of a spirit. It had been a few years since the experience with her grandmother, and by then I had gained more confidence in my abilities. I didn't doubt what I was seeing this time, and I didn't hesitate to say something. "There's a spirit attached to you," I said bluntly. I could clearly see the outline of it, its grayed-out silhouette hovering just behind her left side, leaning in far too close for comfort. The moment I noticed it, irritation flared. The audacity of it. The invasion. It felt intrusive and disrespectful. How dare it, I thought. What a violation. She asked, "Where is it?" "Right there," I said, pointing. "Behind you, over your shoulder." Before I could think better of it, I reached across the limo and swatted at the space beside her head, as if I was shooing away a fly. Instantly, the spirit darted away to her other shoulder. That only irritated me more. I swatted again and shouted out loud. "Go away! Get out of here!" I snapped. The window beside her was open, and I made a few more sharp motions, trying to usher it out through the opening. My frustration rose quickly. This thing was not welcome, and it definitely did not have permission to be attached to my friend. I felt indignant on her behalf, also protective, and offended. What a creep, I thought. What a spook. How dare it invade her space like this? As you can imagine, the scene must have looked completely unhinged. My friends were used to me talking to things they couldn't see, reacting to presences only I seemed aware of, but even so, they watched in stunned silence as I continued on with this battle with some invisible force. I was fully focused, irritated, and determined to get this thing away from her. Then in all the commotion, she asked with real concern, "Well, who is it?" Her question stopped me cold. Well, I hadn't even considered who it was. I'd only seen it as an intrusion, something unwanted that needed to be removed. So I paused and I actually looked. And suddenly it became clear. "Oh, wow," I said quietly. "It's a guy, early 20s. He's from Costa Rica. You picked him up there." I paused, my chest tightening. "He died young." The moment I said it, my heart dropped. The weight of it hit me all at once. Someone so young, a life cut short. No matter the circumstances, it was tragic. As soon as compassion entered my awareness, he left my friend and moved towards me. He came right up close, so close that I could see his face clearly, inches from mine. His eyes were full of sorrow, not malice, not menace, just grief and confusion. In that instant, he told me everything without words. I could see how he was lost. He didn't fully understand what had happened to him. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know what. He felt invisible, unseen by the living world, which tortured him. He had eventually gravitated towards my friend because of her sensitivity and openness. She couldn't consciously perceive him, but she was inadvertently responding to him on some level, and that had given him hope. So he stayed with her. Then I felt it, his question, directed at me, heavy and aching. "Why are you being so mean to me?" I just wanted to be seen. I was instantly overwhelmed with shame. How could I have been so quick to judge, so quick to label him as a nuisance, as something unwanted, without giving him a chance to explain himself? His energy wasn't heavy because it was harmful. It was heavy because he was suffering. He wasn't clinging to cause harm. He was desperate for help. In that moment, something shifted for him. Through my awareness and through finally being seen, he realized what had happened. He understood that he had died. And as that recognition came, he let go of trying to stay. Right before my eyes, he burst into a brilliant light, expansive, almost blinding. It was like watching a star explode. The intensity of it erased everything else. For a moment, I lost awareness of the limo, my body, the world around me. There was only that light and a glimmer of the profound peace I felt within it. And then he was gone, and my awareness came back to sitting in that limo, stunned, all of us in silence. In the stillness that followed, an immediate, deeper realization washed over me. I saw a reflection of myself in him. I saw how I, too, had been judged, misunderstood, dismissed without being truly seen. I recognized the same cycle playing out: attack and defense, fear meeting fear, pain answering pain. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. Healing begins not with judgment, but with compassion, with the willingness to pause, to look more deeply, to truly see another being beyond their behavior. This goes both ways, no matter whether you're the victim or the perpetrator. That night, I wasn't just helping a lost spirit find peace. I was being shown how to find my own. These stories are just a few examples of the experiences that shape my understanding of the nature of spirits, why some linger, what binds them, and how they can be helped to move forward. Through these moments, I came to recognize patterns, lessons, and deeper truths that could only be learned through lived experience. My friend in particular remains one of the most intuitively open people I've known. There's something about her energy that seems to draw spirits towards her, an openness that some people naturally carry. I've come to recognize that certain individuals hold this kind of resonance, whether they're aware of it or not. As for my own life at the time, those experiences marked the beginning of a profound internal shift. What I was moving through personally mirrored what I was witnessing spiritually. I began to understand that many of the people I felt hurt by were acting from their own limitations, an inability to see clearly, to extend compassion, or to meet me where I truly was. And in that realization, I found a sense of peace. I was able to begin to let go of my anger. I came to see that God was removing people from my path who could no longer walk with me into deeper authenticity. Though it was painful, it was also necessary. I was being asked to release versions of myself and others that no longer aligned with who I was becoming. It was the dismantling of a reality I had once built my identity around, one that lacked the humility, depth, and truth required for the path I was stepping into as a clairvoyant medium. In hindsight, I can see that this unraveling was a gift. It made space for relationships rooted in sincerity, depth, and mutual recognition. It allowed me to redefine my values and choose consciously who I wanted to be in the world. And in doing so, I found a more honest, grounded, and compassionate version of myself. Thank you for listening. Blessings.